Who reminds you most of Steph Curry? I'm sure some of the names that come to mind are Trae Young, Tyrese Halliburton, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant if he was 9 inches shorter. Try all you want, but the overwhelming and correct answer is
IQ from the logo. Quickley for three.
quick, off the top of your head. Of all the active players currently in the NBA, who reminds you most of Steph Curry? The overwhelming and correct answer is no one.
Yo, what's going on, man? I think there's a lot of people in this world that are very low on Immanuel Quickley. All I hear is the contract, 32.5 million. This number is tattooed on my brain right now. But I'm here to convince you that this man is a lot more than just an overpaid Masai Ujiri reject. Rather, I'm going to convince you, not that he is Steph Curry, but that frankly, now that Damian Lillard is out with his Achilles tear, that this man right here, $32.5 million man who was once announced as part of the future of the Toronto Raptors, but has since been largely considered by a lot of people to just be an albatross salary, is probably the closest thing to Steph Curry in the NBA right now. I'm going to use data. I'm going to use film. I'm going to use a lot of stuff to make my case. But honestly, it is just the numbers don't do this guy justice. So let's get to it. Shout outs to AJP. Shout outs to you for becoming a new member. And shout outs to Bueno Kitty, who was already a member but upgraded to VIP tier. We are very, very close to our goal, and I could not think of a better live to do this on. We've been talking a lot about Scotty, a lot about Ingram, and yeah, I think both of them are very underrated. That tends to happen when you're on a losing team. You lose enough. People stop paying attention. People don't watch your games. Don't even lie to me if you're a general NBA person and be like, yeah, I've watched a ton of Immanuel Quickley over the last couple of years. No, you watched him in New York. And in New York, he was a really good player. He's changed a lot since he got to Toronto. And I think a lot of it has been for the better, even though some of his more dominant play types and things we're going to just explore in this live. I'm going to tell you why, as much as Scotty wasn't used optimally last year, as much as Grady sometimes wasn't used optimally, Immanuel Quickley was absolutely not used optimally. And this year, with Brandon Ingram in tow, there's a very good reason to use him very optimally. Not only do you need him to be good. Well, hold on. I've got my foot in my mouth here. No, you don't just want him to be good in order to be a successful team. This guy's ascent is probably going to be tied between, yesterday I did my season preview and I said the upper tier ceiling on this team is 52 wins. This dude having a great season is probably how you get there. So let's talk about it. We're going to use some data. We're going to use some analytics to talk about it. And Jimmy Highroller, shout outs, one of the absolute best content creators on planet Earth. Forget basketball YouTube. I'm talking planet Earth. There are a couple of basketball creators that I would say that about. Jimmy's one of them. And he did a video on, the closest thing to Michael Jordan. And the conclusion was Jimmy Butler. I agree with that conclusion. And when I saw this video pop up on my timeline, as I am a subscriber to Jimmy Highroller, of course I am. Are you? You should be. My first thought was, it's obviously Dame. I don't need to see the charts. I know who the closest thing to Steph Curry is. It's Dame. But I thought to myself, now that Damian Lillard is out, the next up is going to be Immanuel Quickley, right? Oh my God, Jimmy just made a video about Immanuel Quickley. And of course, the conclusion of Jimmy's video, not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't watched it, is that Damian Lillard is the closest. And he uses 10 metrics, 10 things that he scores on a comparison score, and he gives, Steph is the barometer. And so the similarity to Steph becomes the score. And the player who scores highest on those 10 variables then becomes the closest thing to Steph. Now, obviously, just like Michael Jordan, just like Shaquille O'Neal, you're not going to get a 1-for-1 on Steph. There's a lot of things that make Steph amazing, and I hope to explore a lot of those in the context of this conversation. But can you get close? Can you get to 70% Steph? Can you get to 65% Steph? Can you get to 82% Steph, which is allegedly what Damian Lillard is? And so he scored these players on a variety of factors, and he sifted out for, players who had enough in common with Steph to even be worth the comparison: high volume three-point shooters, movement shooters, high volume scorers, etc. And Immanuel Quickley ranked top 10 in a lot of categories. One of those categories was shooting ability, where Quickley on your screen, if you can see, I apologize if you're on your phone, you might have to zoom in a little bit here. Quickley is 9th. So in terms of shooting ability, he had Clay, Desmond Bane, Peyton Pritchard, Buddy Hield, Seth Curry, ironically, Kyrie Irving, a phenomenally underrated shooter, by the way, Damian Lillard, Kevin Durant, and then Immanuel Quickley. These are certainly not the names that Immanuel Quickley is often put into conversations with. I'm more likely to hear Immanuel Quickley being mentioned in the same conversation as Cole Anthony and, players like that, Anthony Simons, than I am in these conversations. But the numbers are not lying. Moving forward off of shooting ability, we go next to shot selection, which is also a huge part of what makes Steph Steph. And here it's Tyrese Halliburton who ranks number 1, Anthony Simons who ranks number 2, Jordan Poole, Patty Mills, Fred VanVleet, former Raptor Fred VanVleet, Tyler Hero, Trae Young, and are my eyes bugging? That's Immanuel Quickley again. Ahead of Luka, ahead of Clay, ahead of Cole Anthony, the aforementioned, ahead of Austin Reeves, who scores very highly as well, ahead of Darius Garland. Once again, every player that I have brought up here is either a former All-Star or Jordan Poole, Anthony Simons, Patty Mills. I mean, these are the outliers, but these guys don't come close in some of the other categories. I continue on with the shot selection. We go next to play style, which is another huge factor of what makes Steph Steph. The movement, shooting, off-ball gravity, playing off of Draymond, playing within the Warriors system. Devin Booker here, in terms of play style, is the first. But Immanuel Quickley is number 2, ahead of CJ McCollum, Jordan Clarkson, Cam Thomas, Desmond Bane, Austin Reeves, Jalen Suggs, Colin Sexton. Again, it's not perfect the way he's done it, but it is interesting to think about. In terms of athleticism, now this one I definitely don't agree with at all. But here we have D'Angelo Russell number 1, Jordan Poole number 2, Peyton Pritchard number 3, Luka number 4, Cade number 5, Clay number 6, Seth number 7, and Immanuel Quickley number 8. Are you keeping count of how many times Immanuel Quickley's been top 10? He just keeps getting there, keeps getting to top 10, right? In terms of passing, where Immanuel Quickley is such a massively improved passer over the last couple of years. I mean, this was one of my biggest concerns with him, and one of the biggest reasons he's earned this reputation as an off guard, not a pure point guard. But he's improved a lot. Here, number 1 is Dennis Schroeder. And again, this is a similarity score. This is not ranking out the best passers. These are the passers that are most similar to Steph. And once again, you have Immanuel Quickley in the top 15 at number 14. For my money, over the last couple of years, Quickley has actually been a better passer than Steph. Although that also deserves some context. In terms of portability, a huge aspect of Steph Curry is that you can put him basically on any team in the world and you would still extract value. And once again, in terms of a similarity score, 81.4% similar is Immanuel Quickley at number 16. Just behind Damian Lillard, Dante DiVincenzo, Klay Thompson, Peyton Pritchard, Buddy Hield. So you start to see that, okay, maybe we're clickbaiting a little bit with the Steph Curry clone stuff, but there's at least something to say here. And these were the final results. These were the total aggregates. And in this aggregate study, you can call it, the top 10 were Damian Lillard, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Tyrese Halliburton. If you're counting, that's all NBA, all NBA, all NBA, all NBA, all NBA. Chris Paul, all NBA. Luka Doncic, all NBA. Fred VanVleet, and Immanuel Quickley. There ain't a lot of outliers here, bro. Everyone up here is either an all-star, soon to be all-star, superstar, Hall of Famer, greatest point guard, one of the greatest point guards in league history. These are some incredible players. You don't get to the first non-star player until you get to maybe Anthony Simons at 20, which means the 19 players most similar to Steph have at least had an all-star season or will almost definitely have an all-star season. I'm talking about Austin Reeves and CJ McCollum. Well, CJ McCollum is like notoriously one of the greatest players of all time to never make an all-star team. But nevertheless, these are some incredible players. And all, by the way, players that are, I would say, worth $32 million. But okay, who cares, man? You're close to Steph Curry. I know Steph Curry. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time. Immanuel Quickley is not the greatest shooter of all time. So what are we doing here, right? And in terms of, I'm going to make this really big for a second. Just give me 1 second. Let me make myself small, make this really big. In terms of all the things that were measured, shooting ability, play style, gravity, usage and creation, right? Portability, passing, defense, athleticism. I will let you know right now, Immanuel Quickley not being similar to Steph as a defender is a feather in Immanuel Quickley's cap. He's a better defender. Reputationally, analytically, all over the place. He's a better defender. He has longer arms. He does more. Here's how Steph Curry and Immanuel Quickley actually measure out in terms of some of these analytics. I'm actually going to make myself really small while I go for these heavy graphics here. Here's how their defensive matchups look. You see a lot of overlaps, right? In terms of pick and roll ball handling, once again, you see a lot of overlaps here. It's a ton of overlaps, right? Immanuel Quickley is the orange, by the way. So clearly, if there's a gap in terms of usage by play type, it is that Steph Curry is a way better screen, at using screens. And that's partially due to function. That's partially due to his skill. And we're going to break down some film at some point in this live. And we're going to show you just the difference between these two players and how they do things. Because, let's just be real. Vince Carter used to be compared to Michael Jordan. Kobe Bryant compared to Michael Jordan. Kobe got about as close as any human being will ever probably get to Michael. And even still, there was like a 6% gap in terms of efficiency between Kobe and Michael. So even close is not quite close. And Steph Curry, for some people, is the greatest point guard of all time. I'm not saying Immanuel Quickley can get there. I'm not saying he will ever get there. I'm saying if Immanuel Quickley has one season in his career as good as Steph Curry last year, it will be the monumental all-time, development season. That being said, just because you're not as good as somebody that you're being compared to doesn't mean you don't do similar things and provide similar value in different contexts, maybe even in a scaled down role. No one's suggesting that Immanuel Quickley is going to average 30 points per game, which is something Steph is fully capable of doing. Here, for the record, are Immanuel Quickley's closest players according to Crafted NBA. This is a very interesting list. Offensively, the closest player to Immanuel Quickley last year, which, by the way, Immanuel Quickley only played 33 games, so, small sample size, alert, are Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Jamal Murray, Austin Reeves, Damian Lillard, Jalen Williams. The 6 closest players to him offensively are all-star adjacent players plus Austin Reeves. Defensively, it's some stout defenders, some mixed defenders, not some great defenders overall. Austin Reeves, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray, Damian Lillard, Devin Booker. These are not the players. I mean, why are the analytics and the eye test and the rhetoric so split on Immanuel Quickley? That's what I don't completely understand. Is it the earned reputation of glorified sixth man? Is it the label of, he's overpaid? Or is this really an all-star adjacent player hiding in plain sight for you and you're just not seeing it? Because maybe you're not watching it. Maybe it's not getting covered. It's not being talked about. I certainly haven't seen ESPN covering Immanuel Quickley's great ascent as a Raptor. But I can tell you, as someone who watched a lot of him in New York, he is a much better player in Toronto than he ever was in New York. But he's different. Here is Immanuel Quickley versus Steph Curry. This is interesting. So I'm going to make myself real small here. Make this really big. In terms of true shooting percentage, there is a monumental 5% gap. In terms of shot quality, Steph is literally the definition of the shot quality index. He is 100th percentile with 100 value. Immanuel Quickley is 96th percentile, however, in shot quality, which is about as high as any Raptor has gotten in a really long time. Believe me, Fred VanVleet used to dominate these analytics. I think Quickley is probably better. And 96th percentile is great, but the value is 81. In terms of free throw rate, Quickley gets to the line a little bit more. 3-point attempt rate, obviously, Steph Curry is lights out, highest volume 3-point shooter we've seen in NBA history. So he is 83rd percentile in terms of 3-point rate. And offensive rebounding, this isn't Quickley's, and in terms of load, they both carried monumental loads in terms of, creation and all that stuff. Portability, they're relatively close, 9.2 versus 8.4. Passer rating, Quickley obviously getting a huge boost for taking care of the basketball last year, 92nd percentile, Steph in the 81st percentile. And in terms of crafted plus minus, Quickley is incredibly underrated in this regard, right? 91st percentile versus 99th percentile, but 91st percentile in terms of offensive plus minus is insane. The defense, obviously, I don't want to discuss the defense. I'm not comparing these two players defensively. Quickley is going to be a better defender. He's obviously been a better defender. He has longer arms. I wanted to compare the 5th year of Immanuel Quickley to some all-star guards or all-star adjacent guards. Desmond Bane just went off for like 4 first-round picks, and I'm told he's the reason that the Magic are going to be title contenders. So it's worthwhile to say that Quickley and Bane were both in their 5th year last year. Damian Lillard was in his 5th year from 2016 to 2017. In terms of the analytics, obviously, Quickley's a little bit worse in terms of the box plus minus, but take a look at the per 100 numbers, and I think you get a slightly different picture. Quickley scored more per 100 possessions last year. So why is it that you're not talking about Immanuel Quickley scoring? Well, could it be because he averaged 27 fucking minutes a game and averaged 17 points? Our minds just don't process that. We're like, what? He averaged 17 and 27? That is a ridiculous scoring rate. And that scoring rate is higher than Desmond Bane. In terms of field goal percentage, Bane hasn't beat big time. And that we'll cover why that is. 3-point percentage, Bane hasn't beat by like 2%. Free throw percentage, Bane hasn't beat by 3%. So all the efficiency stuff is going to go in Bane's favor. But one thing I'll point to, which is Immanuel Quickley has 2.2 more assists per game while averaging 0.6 fewer turnovers. Immanuel Quickley's ability to take care of the basketball, not always, by the way, a positive thing, in my opinion. I think sometimes he's too cautious. He doesn't throw passes. His decision-making is too late. He slows down the play. But his ability to simply cut down turnovers is a superstar trait. One of the greatest things about Dirk Nowitzki, Chris Paul, Michael Jordan, Kawhi Leonard, is their teams tend to turn the ball over a hell of a lot less when they're on the court. It's one of the greatest things, and Thinking Basketball has been doing this entire series on the greatest peaks of the 21st century, and they've been coining the term turnover suppression. So, which is to say, a player's impact on the team turnovers. Immanuel Quickley has been very positive in this regard, especially when it comes to his own turnovers. He's very good at it, and he's handled a ton of possessions which are deeply uncomfortable for him, and he just does not turn it over. Again, 3 turnovers for every 10 assists. Are you kidding me? These are like Jose Calderon numbers. It's truly, he's doubled his assist rate from New York, yo. Like, he has been given a huge job by Darko, and he is actually doing it. But, okay, fine. Compare it to Dame, in year 5, and you see a gap, right? There is a gap. There's a substantial gap, 46.5% versus 49.2% on twos. Dame obviously had the higher coverage. Quickley actually shoots better from 3 than Dame in his 5th year, which is relevant to me, at least. He has more assists and fewer turnovers. Again, he beats out Damian Lillard in terms of this, but obviously Dame gets a lot more defensive attention, right? But does he? Damian Lillard played with CJ McCollum. Okay, I'm gassing it. Obviously, he gets a lot more attention than Immanuel Quickley, but I mean, let's not be facetious and too quick to judge here. Let's not be too quick to judge. It's more difficult to play with Orlando Robinson, regardless of the context of which conference you play in, and Colt Swider and some of the washed lineups. Scotty couldn't buy a bucket last year at times. I mean, RJ went through his own cold streaks. There's a consistent big in the paint who can't shoot. There's a lot, that you could say you should be more graceful towards Immanuel Quickley for some of these numbers. And what's interesting is, as much grace as I want to extend him for his numbers are fucking awesome. These are amazing numbers. Moving forward, to other players that maybe you want to look at. Apologize there. 1 sec. Pull that back. Here is Immanuel Quickley versus Damian Lillard, Desmond Bane. Whoops. Did I miss Steph Curry? I'm going to have to pull this up as an independent. Yeah, I did. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to pull this up myself. Give me 1 sec. Nope. I missed it. His numbers are not perfect next to Steph Curry's. Obviously, Curry has him beat in all the analytics, 3-point percentage, shot rate, whatever. But the point here is the gap is not it's not the gap that you think it is. It's not the gap of David and Goliath. It's not the gap between, current Scotty Barnes and current Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's not that type of gap. It's a gap, though. It's a gap in efficiency. It's largely due to a lot of the stuff that's on screen here. Shout out to Raptors Republic. I was watching a video essay by Esfan Jarabarhani, and he brought up some stats that I wanted to recite for you here. Quickley is 5th in the NBA among players attempting at least 3 pull-up threes per game at 38.7% on pull-up three-pointers. Again, the hardest shot in basketball, really, if you're thinking about it. Considering the depth and range that he pulls from, sometimes this guy is like shooting from 28, 29, 30 feet. This is valuable. Okay, he's 74th percentile in points per possession on pick and roll. Again, this was not the case in New York. They put the ball in his hands in his second year, and he was awful. 3.5 catch and shoot threes per game and 36.5%. This is bad. This is bad. This is RJ Barrett level. It's horrible. And it's worth noting that he's been better before, right? He's had more positive success before. I think the previous year he's been north of 40%. He's been anywhere from 43% to 39%. So 36.5% is like an unusual outlier season. And I think it's noise because from Kentucky to this point, I believe he is a 42+% catch and shoot 3-point shooter. And that is only going to get better with Immanuel Quickley. There is something worth noting that in New York versus in Toronto, his dip on efficiency in terms of floaters has been notable. But I've also counted this many, many times on this channel where I've said Darko has pushed him away from his favorite pet spots, right? Quickley, coming into, every single game that the Raptors would have against the Knicks, the Raptors always pressured him for the floater because this guy was dynamite. He was shooting 52, 53, 54% on floaters, somewhere 12 feet and out, right? Darko has pushed Quickley over the last year and a half to more finish at the rim. And this is not necessarily like the easiest thing in the world when you have your brain telling you floater, 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 everything floater, right? And so I think that it's important to realize that now that we're moving away from development and moving more towards winning, that hopefully you can put some of the stuff that you've done with the on-ball creation, finishing at the rim, pick and roll creation, etc. You can put a little bit of that in your back pocket as a counter. But now you can go back to the things that you're really great at. And that's not a demotion. I feel like people sometimes misunderstand, oh, Scotty's going back to a role he's more comfortable in. Quickley's going back to a role he's more comfortable in. RG's going back to a role they're more comfortable in. Yeah, but the development reps are not lost, right? I mean, you have more counters. You might want to finish with your right hand. Again, for instance, if I'm a basketball player, let's just say my efficiency on contested layups with my right hand is 72%, and my efficiency with my left hand is like 42%. This is a major gap. So let's say I have a coach who pushes me to finish only with my left hand for an entire year. And let's say through this reckless process of development, I move it from 42% to like 62%. Now, the next year, let's say our goal is to win a state championship. I'll go right back to hitting my right hand, but now I have a counter to my left. It's the same thing with Quickley, Barnes, and Barrett, which is maybe they were all in more elevated roles over the last couple of years than you would like. Maybe you don't want Scotty Barnes taking so many catch and shoots, so many pull-up jumpers. Maybe you don't want Scotty Barnes necessarily handling as many pick and rolls. Maybe you do want him crashing the glass more and getting more to the rim, which is what everyone likes to say, like, oh, Scotty, park your ass under the rim. Maybe you do want Immanuel Quickley moving more off the ball. Maybe you do want RJ Barrett driving left a little bit more. Maybe you do want RJ Barrett, to stay away from the mid-range and continue to do the things that he's typically good at, which is the catch and shoots and less pull-ups. But now that you have it, even if Scotty Barnes went from a 20% pull-up mid-range pull-up shooter So like a 29% pull up. Under the context of an entire year, if you just have one pull up shot a game, that's like 9%. That's a huge gap. That's a huge gap. And that's not to say that just because you did it last year, that you can't keep working on it, that you didn't already keep working on it this offseason, that you aren't already better at it. There's a chance that all the things that Scotty and Immanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett were asked to do last year, they're already better at. But Ingram coming into place restabilizes the entire unit and allows them to go back to things that they're more comfortable doing. Again, not to say they're not going to be allowed to pick and roll create, or that Quickly isn't going to be able to, push to go to the basket, or, have a whole bunch of on ball possessions where he's pick and roll with Jakob Poeltl. He'll still be able to do that. It's just the bulk of the possessions will go away from things that you're bad at towards things you're good at. And that's the point that I think I'm trying to hammer home when I try to sell you on the fact that this team can legitimately go up 20 wins, is because the difference between doing things you're bad at versus now wanting to do things you're good at is probably worth at least 10 wins in and of itself. And I think herein lies the Quickly thing, right? Which is, you're not this bad at catch and shoot shooter. I think a lot of this comes down to injuries, rust, coming in and out of the lineup, playing with some funky lineups, having some weird rhythm with your teammates. A lot of the pressure that the Raptors played with defensively probably exhausting him, dead legs, maybe, the creation on some of those. I mean, it's a really small sample size of 33 games. I mean, 33 games, 3.5. You do the math. That's like 100 shots, man. That's barely 100 shots. We've seen great shooters shoot 25% for an entire month. We remember CJ Miles. He had a cold stretch and he had a hot stretch. I mean, shit happens. Until you see this out for a whole year, I think you just have to trust the eye. And the eye tells me Immanuel Quickley is a dynamite shooter. We're going to get into the film here, but I do want to give a quick shout out. We are one member away. Are we one member away, or did we just hit our mark? I think we just hit our mark, yo. Oh man, y'all are clutch. My cutoff was September 16th. I think we just hit our mark. AJP, shout outs to you. Anab Udine, shout out to you. And Hugh Gordon, shout out to you. How do you become a member like these fine ladies and gentlemen? And Bueno Kitty, also shout out to you for upgrading your membership. It is on the channel page. I do want to give a quick shout out here. I think we just hit 100, yo. I mean, these are the perks. I'm gonna pull it up on the screen just so I don't have to repeat it over and over. But these are the perks. And while these are not stated on YouTube yet, I'm actually really, really nervous about changing the perks on YouTube as stated. But these are the official perks. This is what I'm going with. Chatters, y'all got a member chat. Everyone got a member chat. Custom stickers, custom emojis. We're going to work through that. Main page thanks, and Sunday show access. The Sunday show, for those who don't know, is going to be my attempt every Sunday to do a 1 hour, 40 minutes to 1 hour show on the NBA and the Raptors week that just was. Break down the analytics, any trends, any signals, etc. It's going to be deep, and it's a commitment that I have to this channel and to our members. Shout outs to all of you. And I want to give a quick shout out to our VIP members. Just in case you don't know what a member chat is, every month that you become a member, as long as you stay on for the next month, you get a chat, which is a little bit like a super chat. And, it flashes on your screen just like this. But instead of became a new member, you'll be able to say, Rob, you're an idiot. Or maybe something nicer than Rob, you're an idiot. Okay. And I just want to give a quick shout out to our VIPs. We got a lot of VIPs now. I honestly, when we started this initiative, I could not have imagined we'd get even 2 VIPs, but we got more than 2. Shout outs to Susan Garrett, Springer, Stanley WK, Pepperjack, Karen Hall, Apex Glass On, Courtside 6, Disc Revered, and Bueno Kitty as our VIP tier members. Shout outs to you. The VIPs get a little bit of an extra bonus, which is that you can email me once a month for a topic of your choice. It's a topic request. If it's a great topic, I'll make a video essay about it. If it's an okay topic, I'll devote a live to it, maybe. And if it's not the greatest topic, but I still want to honor the commitment, I'll devote at least 15 minutes to a particular live stream at the end and discuss your topic. So shout outs to you. Think of great topics that you want discussed. It could be trade targets, it could be a draft prospect, it could be a lot of things. I think it's a great way to initiate some camaraderie within the community. Also, big shout outs to our most recent members prior to this live stream. Bueno Kitty, upgrading to VIP. Shout outs to you. Kano Agito, Courtside 6, Rafael Moraes, Medved. Shout outs to you, Medved, longtime supporter of this channel. Camellia, 871, Arman Basin, Darth Plant Slayer. Please email me and tell me why you're slaying plants, bro. I happen to like plants, but shout outs to you. Do what you got to do. Joe Stay Rebel and Odin Prime. These are our clutch memberships, I would say, because honestly, when we were at about 80 a few days ago, I was pretty sure that we were not going to make it. I was like, okay, man, you tried your best. But shout outs to you guys, man. You made it happen. Thank you very, very much. We got to 100, man. We hit the YouTube bonus. Shout outs to you guys. Okay, let's get to this film session, man. I think you're gonna see what Immanuel Quickley does, and I've done this for a reason, not to skirt any copyright or whatever, because I need you to see these players as moving objects as opposed to your star obsession with Steph Curry. Do you understand? Like, Steph Curry is a fucking icon. It's like watching Michael Jordan shoot a jumper. We have all, basketball fans, have all seen Steph Curry shoot a jumper, and it is iconic. There are feelings attached to that. I want you to get away from the feelings, and I want you to look at him like a dot on the page, just for a moment. And of course, this is Steph Curry. That's a jumper. Boom. So again, we'll slow all this down. We'll put it side by side, but just to give you an idea, if you've been living under a rock for the last 15 years, you don't know this guy's revolutionized the game, and he's got a pretty smooth jumper. Some might say he's the greatest shooter of all time. Those who think he's not the greatest shooter of all time are probably, I don't know, smoking crack. Vegan grass. They have to stay sub for 3 months, though. I believe it's 2 months. I believe you have to stay sub up for 2 months for the bonus to kick in. But, if you can't afford it, shout outs, man. We got real close regardless. This is a massive outpouring of support. And my thought process here was immediately like, I got to become an even better content creator. I got to do more. So this is great. Okay, let's get to this. I mean, you'll notice this is not Steph Curry anymore. Let's just let these plays run. Are you seeing the gap? Are you seeing the difference? What is the difference? That's really what I'm going to get down to. Obviously, there's a lot of differences between these two players, even though there are so many similarities. But you see it on a play like that. That is 100%. Like, Steph has run that exact play with Draymond a million times. So what is it? When you look at these players side by side, you start to see that there are some similarities. And when we slow it down a little bit more, you're going to see it even more. If you squint your eyes, can you start to confuse them for each other a little bit? Is there like some party that's like, wait, is Steph left or right now? And I promise you, to anyone who thinks like, oh, you could do this for anybody, you could do this for Anthony Edwards, you can't. I promise you, it is very difficult to confuse Anthony Edwards' jump shooting motion and everything with Steph Curry's. But here, let's slow it down. Let's get to the crux of what we're trying to talk about. What are we trying to dissect here? What is the difference between these two players? And I think you're going to see that difference on this play right here. Okay. This is the point of no return. The dribble has been picked up. The shooting motion has been started. The gap between these two players is that. That's the gap. That's a big gap, but it is the gap. The gap is speed. Speed of the release, the motion of the release. We're going to talk about that. What's the gap? The gap here is, first of all, Quickley is a very unconventional jump shooter. If you look at his arm right now, that is an absolutely abnormal jumper. They both have extremely outlier jump shots. How do I know this? I'm a really good jump shooter. That's how I know this. This is not how they teach you to shoot basketballs. Steph Curry, Immanuel Quickley, these are freak jump shots. Steph Curry's freak jump shot is celebrated, whereas Immanuel Quickley's freak jump shot is dissected and isolated. And there's reasons for that. Quickley's jumper is a little low. One, it's a little low, and it's a 2-motion jumper. You can see that there is that. But just like Steph, he will start to let go of it on his way up. And that is where these two players are very similar and also unlike 99% of players in the NBA. Did you notice that? When you see most players shoot a jumper, the most conventional jumpers that you can think of are like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, etc., like this, Dwayne Wade. Go watch those players on a slow scale, and you'll see they rise to the apex, one motion, and then they release at their apex on their way down. Quickley and what makes Quickley, I think, and Curry so special in this sense is they release on the way up. Now, the gap here is Curry's just a little bit faster, and his arms are a little bit shorter, and his hands are a little bit smaller, and he's better at it. There's a lot of other gaps that we're going to get into in the bulk of like what I think is going to be the meat of this, the meat and potatoes of this live, which is going to be dissecting the differences and what Quickley can do to get closer to Curry. But I think this is one of the bigger things that I've noticed in Quickley's jumper is he shoots on the way up. And that is extremely important for a movement shooter. So here are the 5 things that I believe Immanuel Quickley needs to improve on to get closer to Steph. Now, what do I mean by closer to Steph? Do I mean he'll become Steph Curry 2.0? No. I mean this is a belief of mine. There's like maybe 6 players, 7 players in NBA history that I think will never be replicated. Steph is one of them. He is so much of an outlier. His hand-eye coordination, speed, off-ball gravity, motion, shooting, pureness, accuracy. There's too many things that go right with that guy for anyone to completely mimic him. And maybe someone will in my lifetime, but I very much doubt it. Steph's jumper is completely an outlier, right? But that doesn't mean you can't get 82% of the way there. It doesn't mean you can't become an all-star doing the Steph thing, right? Michael Finley, Eddie Jones, Kobe Bryant, Penny Hardaway, Grant Hill, all players, Jerry Stackhouse, Vince Carter, all players who had Jordan-isms. None of them hit Jordan. Kobe is the one that got 82%. Maybe Vince got 72%. Maybe Michael Finley got 55%. My point is, getting 82% close to the greatest point guard, arguably, who's ever played, I still think it's magic, but you can definitely say it's Steph, the greatest shooter ever. That's going to take some work. So here's what I would do if I was Immanuel Quickley. And I know Immanuel Quickley has been working extremely hard this offseason, so shout outs to Immanuel Quickley. And also, shout outs to Peniel St. Fleur. Please let me know I'm saying that correctly. I apologize. Peniel? Is it Peniel or Peniel? Peniel St. Fleur. Thanks a lot for subbing up, man. Appreciate you. So the first thing, obviously, is 20% more motor. If you notice Steph Curry, he is probably the greatest off-ball mover. Like, people give him a lot of credit for being the greatest shooter in NBA history. Yeah, he is. He definitely is. There's very few players that can even put a candle to his shooting accuracy. Players who are often mentioned, Klay Thompson, Drazen Petrovic, Pistol Pete Maravich, although never took anywhere near the, volume of jumpers that Steph took. Mahmoud Raul Abdul Rauf is a player, formerly Chris Jackson from LSU, who was sort of, blackballed from the NBA. I think he was an incredible shooter. I think Quickley can end up in these conversations. I think he's that good a shooter. Reggie Miller is up there. Ray Allen is up there. There's all those guys. I think Quickley, when he retires, can be one of the greatest shooters in NBA history. But the motor is going to have to be massively dialed up. You'll often see Steph when he manipulates defenses, he's often dancing without the basketball. He's faking defenders out without the basketball. He fakes a cut left and he actually dekes his defender out right. He is consistently running laps around the defense. Quickly's motion is a lot more centered to the big, center of the court. He's not doing wide circles around and I think that often will impact how open you are on the catch. The second thing, obviously, apart from the motor, is the preparation on the shot prep. Like you'll see Steph Curry is probably the most prepared guy when he catches the basketball in NBA history. Half the work is catch. And he's also playing with much more talented players in Golden State and has been for the last few years. So I think that helps. And I think Steph himself has had some very, very down seasons, not necessarily like awful seasons, but not superstar seasons when he's had to play with less help. So I do wonder if Steph Curry himself could lift the boat of the Cole Swiders and Davion Mitchells of the world. I suspect he'd be a lot better at it than Immanuel Quickley, but how much better, right? So again, one important thing of getting Brandon Ingram is you finally get something that mimics a competitive roster. You finally get enough around him that he's not going to be ganged up on. And in that, I think you need to make some adjustments to how relentlessly you chase the basketball, how much activity there is, how much intelligence and precision there is. 5% more speed on the release. Again, I don't know if this is something he's necessarily going to be able to fix. He has a 6'9" wingspan, which really helps him defensively. But I think if he had a 6'2", 6'3" wingspan like Steph, he might already be like considered like the second to third greatest shooter in the league. I think the long arms are really, really difficult. I don't have long arms. I watched a lot of players with long arms struggle with free throws. There's just more places for the jumper to fall apart when you have longer arms, more motion. Now, obviously, he has that acute angle that Steph has. He has the motion on the way up, release on the way up that Steph has. But can we make it 5% quicker? Maybe you bridge that 5% with 2% more shot readiness, 2% speed, more speed on the release, and 1% you're just a little bit more open when you catch it. 15% faster court processing. The biggest difference between Immanuel Quickley and Steph Curry is not shooting accuracy, but rather court processing. Steph is a supercomputer. He is one of the smartest off-ball players ever. He reads every scouting report. He knows exactly what you're doing. He sees your mistake before you make it, and he darts like a bullet without the basketball. He is consistently roaming. He is a constant threat, and teams try to stop him, and he's just such a great manipulator of the defense, partially because he's ahead of the defense. Quickley, on the other hand, despite his very impressive assist to turnover ratio, is often behind the defense. I feel like he is not as proactive as Steph. I think he's more reactive. I don't know if this is something you can fix, to be honest. I really don't. And I know that you're never going to get to Steph level of court processing. There's a lot of video essays and literature on how Steph sees the game, like the accuracy of his eyes and all that stuff, the light test stuff that he does. If I'm Immanuel Quickley, I'm doing everything in my power to get 15% faster. 15% faster is still really far away from Steph Curry, but it's not that far. He also squares to the basket faster. I agree with you 100%. And that comes back to the shot prep. Like Steph is always square to the basket. And honestly, the squaring to the basket stuff is a little bit controversial now. I know a lot of trainers who actually swear that you're not supposed to be like 100% square to the basket, that you could be on a little bit of an angle. I think Steph also catches it and is able to release it in a more variety of angles. Like he doesn't need to be perfectly square to get it off. And I think that that's part of, what makes him so deadly. Again, like Steph the motion for Steph is more up. Quickley is more flat. He shoots a flatter shot. The arc is not the same. I think that will impact also like how much grace you have when the ball hits the rim. So if Quickley is not swishing it into the basket, he's got a little bit more of a Kawhi Leonard shot where it's a little bit more flat. And yeah, I mean, 5% more accuracy. I mean, God, that's easy to say, right? Like, yeah, just be 5% more accurate from everywhere. But it really is all over the place. His analytics profile would be like 4 boxes minus if he was just a little bit more accurate on some of the stuff that he's doing right now. It's perfectly achievable for Quickley to be an 89% free throw shooter. It's perfectly attainable for him to shoot 47% from 2, and it's perfectly possible for him to shoot 40% from 3. If he hits all of those benchmarks, he will already be around 5% more accurate in terms of true shooting, and I think that will go a very long way in terms of the analytics nerds and community acknowledging him as truly, truly one of the great NBA shooters. And then it comes down to 10% more role optimization. Now, again, this goes back to development versus winning. And I don't think the two things are necessarily mutually exclusive, but you do need to have a North Star. I've said that before. 10% more role optimization, which means play to your strengths. You Quickly has a lot of advantages on Steph as well. We haven't talked about it. He's bigger. He's faster. I don't know if you know this. Steph is fast. Quickly is lightning fast. Like, he is an insane blur up and down the court. Like, truly, truly go watch him in high school, college. He is insanely fast in the open court. He gets from end to end faster than Steph, but Steph is more on balance, more coordinated. There's also like finicky stuff in their games. Like, Quickly has more of a propensity to pick up his dribble, whereas Steph will continue to navigate. So I think a lot of this really comes down to Steph Curry is a better shooter and Steph Curry is way better at basketball. Quickly has a lot of the athletic tools to catch up to him in terms of an 80% match on his output and his optimization, play style, aesthetics, etc. But I think a lot of that is going to come down to him getting back into his role. Now, Steph Curry can be stopped. We've seen it time and time again. Steph's clutch percentages are actually pretty awful. And especially if you force him to create. That's the gap between Steph and Dame, Steph and Cade, Steph and Luka, is the size can sometimes be a limiting factor for Steph, and the lack of athleticism, like the burst athleticism. He's not Ja Morant as an athlete. So he leverages his off-ball stuff to get himself open. Whereas a lot of players like Steve Francis, Baron Davis, etc., guys who are more on-ball demons, they can beat the shit out of you with the basketball. Steph can do some version of that due to his extreme skill, hand-eye coordination, balance, patience, etc., and shooting gravity. The fact that he's able to be a threat 40 feet from the basket and you really don't have a lot of space to work with. But I think that if I were to put both players at about 25 feet and say you can't shoot from outside 25 feet, you got to play 25 feet and in, 3 dribbles or less, both players are going to be equally good at getting off a shot. Where Steph exceeds is that how often he does not go to that. How often he'll pull the defender out, utilize a screen, maybe get off the ball, get back on the ball really quick. This type of like mental mapping. So let's put it this way. If I could take all of Steph Curry's, if I could take Steph Curry's brain, right? Just take his brain and Immanuel Quickley's brain, and I could flop them on the table and I could swap the two brains, which is to say motor function, balance, all that stuff. That's unfortunately all brain stuff, right? Quickley would be a better player immediately. Regardless of the longer arms, bigger hands, all that stuff, Quickley would be a better player than Steph if I could swap their brains. So really a lot of this comes down to how quickly are things going for you? What are your tendencies? What are your weaknesses? How well do you read the court overall? How well do you utilize your teammates? Who are your teammates? All of these things matter. I think Quickley is the closest thing to Steph Curry. And hopefully, after this video, you will have a little bit more respect for Immanuel Quickley and will not just see him as a $32.5 million albatross. But I really don't, I think this season is going to be very defining for Immanuel Quickley. As much as, yesterday, when I did the season preview, shout outs to those of you who were there with us when we were doing the season preview, as much as I talked about Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes, because those are the two biggest salaries, right? Let's not mistake it. The third most important player on this team is Immanuel Quickley. As much as you want to have a lot of faith in Jacoby Walter and Grady Dick as movement shooters, the type of player that unlocks Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram is exactly the same player, and it is Steph Curry. And if you can get a player who can mimic 75, 70%, even 65% of what Steph Curry does and do it 80% as accurately and not turn the basketball over and veer into these play types that Steph has really if I'm Immanuel Quickley, I'm just watching film, because a lot of when Immanuel Quickley fails as a basketball player, like when he gets stuck, when he picks up his dribble, when he misses an opening, when he cuts into the wrong space, it just comes down to mental mapping. He just has a really poor processing of the game. And last year, I said that Scotty and RJ might even be better point guards than Quickley. And it's not because Quickley's turnover prone, it's just because Quickley doesn't see things that those guys do. So as the game slows down for Quickley, which again is ambitious, hoping that a 26-year-old slows down, I think it can get better. But part of the way it can get better is simply with the roll optimization. Again, play more slingshot off the ball, play with more screen and roll, get off the ball, get back on the ball, catch quick. You're playing with dynamite playmakers all over the place. That's Steph's cheat code. He played with Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green. These are all great passers. Great passers. He played with great passers all around him, and that utilized him. He also played with great screeners. And now you have Colin Murray-Boyle, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl. You have great screeners to work with, right? So again, you take all of this together. Please do not quote me a year from now and say you said he'd be Steph Curry. I'm not saying he's Steph Curry. I'm not even saying he's close to Steph Curry. I'm saying sometimes I don't even think he can fucking carry Steph Curry's jockstrap. But I'm saying if I pull every single player in the entire league and I say for one season I need someone to replicate what Steph Curry does for the Golden State Warriors, there ain't a lot of options better than Immanuel Quickley, yo. Maybe Peyton Pritchard is close, but I think Quickley's maybe a little bit better at it. Who's another player? Desmond Bane has Curryisms. Anthony Simons, but he's just so atrocious defensively. It's almost unplayable. And Steph's value comes from the fact that he's just so great, at participating in the team scheme. He doesn't kill you defensively. Quickley has the same attribute, except he's better. So again, like if you're talking about just an overall map of just trying to recreate this player in a vacuum, I think Immanuel Quickley is the guy. Okay, let's get to some comments here. Medved saying Quick has been putting in work in the offseason. I have a feeling he will have a great season. I have a feeling too. I have a lot of faith in this dude. WYSO, why haven't Scotty and IQ had good on-court chemistry yet? It's a really good question. Their numbers together are pretty bad. And I think a lot of it comes down to they're both trying to do things that they're not comfortable doing. And neither one of them can occupy the space on the court that one of them needs to occupy. Like neither one of them are as good creating. They're both kind of like similar players. Like Quickley doesn't have anywhere, like Scotty doesn't have, neither one of them have the basketball IQ right now of Draymond and Steph, right? And yet physically they have a lot in common. And play style type and strengths and weaknesses type, they have a lot in common with Steph and Draymond. The difference here is Steph and Draymond know their roles, and Steph and Draymond are miles ahead in terms of chemistry. And Steph and Draymond weren't 23 years old last year. You know what I mean? Like there's some moving forward to be done here. But I think Ingram, with his wide shoulders and 6'9", can also be a potentially good screener, dribble handoff partner for Quickley. Obviously, Quickley had great synergy with Yak, and given how much money you've invested in both these players, it's good that at least they have each other. You just need offense, man. At the end of the day, last I checked, every single NBA game has been decided by one factor: which team scored more points. Quickley scores more points per 100 possessions than Scotty and RJ last year. If I'm not mistaken, he scored more than both those guys. So, and he scored more efficiently than those guys. So in a lot of ways, him not being seen as like this megastar, I get it. I totally get it. If you watch basketball, if you understand basketball, you certainly understand he does not process the game like a megastar. He has more in common in terms of computing power and court processing with Benedict Mathurin than he does currently with Steph Curry. But if you could harness some of it, and of course, this is Darko's specialty. This is what he's done. He turned an off-ball player in Desmond Bane into a competent point guard level creator. He turned a completely off-ball player in Kentucky in Devin Booker into a point guard adjacent player. I think Quickley is better than those two players at the same stage in terms of being a point guard. He has actual reps in high school of being a point guard. It's not the most optimal thing for him. So the fact that Darko can just continuously, do the film breakdown, study with him, break down, what his mistakes are every single game. Here, you should have slipped the screen. Here, you should have gotten off the ball a little bit quicker. Here, you missed this cutter. Here, I don't want this pass going so late. Like continuously educating on the game. Like, don't think a 26-year-old is beyond learning more about the game, and he's still right now approaching his prime. And I think next year, given the fact that we were sort of robbed of whatever Immanuel Quickley was going to be last year. I mean, let's not even lie to ourselves. Last year when he came out against Cleveland, I think most of us had the exact same thought, before he got injured, was like, oh my God, is Immanuel Quickley an all-star? Like, holy shit. He was destroying the Cavs for that, glorious like 13, 14 minutes he played, and then he got hurt. And then, it was just an up and down season, bumpy from that point on. And I think, this year, provided he stays healthy, and that's a big if you get a solid 60 plus games from him and he's able to establish some sort of rhythm, I think it's going to be great. And I mean, let's just be honest. The Raptors deliberately disrupted his rhythm last year. He was in as much a development year as anybody on this team. They parked a 5-year offer into this guy. Masai Ujiri, the same guy who built the championship, parked 5 years sight unseen into this guy. They traded OG Anunoby to get him. He was the centerpiece of that deal. Don't fool yourself into thinking it was RJ Barrett. It was not. RJ was included for contract purposes only. Okay. Maybe the Raptors liked him a little bit. They thought, great, let's rehab the value. But this was a trade where you traded arguably one of the most valuable defenders in the league for Immanuel Quickley. That's really what it was. And you got RJ Barrett as compensation along with it. So the reality is, I think the Raptors really believe in this guy. They're seeing something in the analytics between him and Yak that's truly off the charts. And for most casual fans, I don't think Jakob Poeltl and Immanuel Quickley are like top 10 players, top 15 players of their position. But I think for the Raptors to be successful, both of them are going to have to be something close to that. All right. Mark Tavares. Defenders are exhausted just chasing Curry around the court. I completely agree. That is a huge value add of Steph Curry. Huge. WYSO saying, I kind of wish we would trade RJ Ochai for Darius Garland and move IQ to the 2. Whew, you'd be a very, very small team. But you would be an extremely difficult team to stop too, right? Very difficult. We are at 21 days. We're exactly 3 weeks away from the NBA season, man. 3 weeks away. Anyways, I am going to do something that I haven't done in a really long time. It may not be the healthiest thing, but I'm going to order DoorDash. And I'm going to order DoorDash and order something I really want to eat because I don't feel like cooking right now. It's 8 o'clock. And I'm going to do that largely on the backs of these memberships and this bonus. And I want to thank you guys so fucking much. Like, it is such a huge deal for me. Like, yeah, it was huge, man. I want to thank you guys so much for doing this. It's truly a cheat day, bro. I ate Nutella for breakfast yesterday. Every day's a cheat day. No, it was amazing that you guys did this. Thank you so very much. Like, I had no expectations. I knew that I had to chase this. And again, to those of you who were not familiar, the offer from YouTube was, if you can get members, if you launch memberships, we'll give you $3,000. And for every membership you get beyond that, it's $30 per member, up to 100. We got to 101, I believe, in this chat. So provided y'all stay on for another month, that should be a pretty freaking hefty bonus. And that will help me pay off my mortgage at the end of the year. I'm very, very happy. And thank you. Thank you so much for supporting this community. I hope it'll be a worthwhile investment for you. And I hope that I can, I hope that after every single Raptors game, I'm able to make your viewing experience this year. And I hope we'll have a great year. We have been around for 4 years now. That's crazy to say, but it's true. We have not covered this team in a single good year. That's the crazy part. We came around Scotty's rookie season, so that was one good year. But then other than that, like, our growth has almost primarily been through the worst stages of, some of the worst moments in Raptors history, or worst seasons in Raptors history. So I am just looking forward to that, man. I was looking at Raptors Digest the other day. I was looking at some of their old videos. They had like 100,000. They had 100,000 views on a video in like 2019, 2020. 100,000. And I mean, shout outs. They're still the most watched Raptors content on YouTube, but they get like 10,000 now. So either YouTube fell off or the Raptors fan base is just in a coma right now, just waiting. Give us something to be excited about. Give us something to rally about. I don't, this recruiter dude, shout out to one of our community members. He said this one thing. He said, I think I'm at a point right now where I need my team to give me something. I think if I'm paraphrasing correctly, I think that's what he said. Like, I'm not at a point where I'm just supporting to support. I need my team to also give me joy. And I need them to give me that sense of like victory. And I think this Raptor team has a chance to do that in spades this year. So it's a great one, man. We should try to get Drew Holiday on a 2-point guard lineup. Drew would be an incredible add to this team. I don't think I would add a first-round pick at this stage. He is very old. I think he's 34, and he's taken a major step back. 59-game season. Well, if we win 59 wins, holy shit. Can you imagine the live streams? Like, we get 1,000 people in here every single game. That'd be great. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Enjoy. Drop any suggestions that y'all have for what cuisine I should be eating. I'm kind of like veering towards Hakka. I kind of want Hakka Chinese food, yo. There's this great Hakka place. They have this awesome dish like Bombay chicken and shit. I was like, I might go into that direction. I'm hungry. All right, I'm gonna talk to y'all later. If you would like to listen to more of my rambling thoughts on basketball, I was on the panel today. I think I had a really good episode. I've been on a streak of really, really good episodes where I refuse to crash out, and I'm kind of like owning that entire thing with Zen-like purity. I will also be on tomorrow. I will also be on Wednesday. So I will be on for a total of 6 hours between tomorrow and Wednesday. We'll be talking about all sorts of stuff, WNBA, NBA, probably some season ranking stuff. So check us out on Player's Choice, the panel, 11 a.m. every single day. And a big thank you to this community. I wish I had like some fireworks, confetti to throw up in the air. Thank you for getting us past 100 with a few hours to spare. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Peace, y'all.